to give the mic to the candidates. And I am going to begin by asking each of you for an opening statement. And that opening statement can include whatever information you care to include. And you're first. So introduce yourself and move from there.
Hi, my name is Mark Rauterkus. My name is Mark Rauterkus, and I'm going to start by thanking everybody. Is this working on second?
Yeah, it looks like
Apparently
it's
it's short.
but let's try.
Just keep moving.
Okay. First off, I'm a Libertarian candidate, and I've run for office in the past, starting in 2001. I didn't like the way Tom Murphy was treating the city. And so I have the mindset that the city's broken. There's some serious problems. And I think there's corruption problems, and I think what's even worse, though, is the indifference that happens. So a lot of what I am going to talk about as far as the controller's race is to become a watchdog, a whistleblower, someone that's going to really work toward performance. The city has oversight of the ICA on one hand, and on the other hand is Act 47, and the controller's office is presently like a fourth fiddle in a quartet. It's pretty redundant. There's a lot of oversight as far as the finances already. But there are very few places in the city where residents can come to get a grip on the city. I want to be able to create a place where we enter the city hall and be able to
Get a grip on the city. And with that in mind, I'll give this
broken microphone and look forward to the questions that follow.
I'll do away with the mic. I think you can hear me. My name is Michael Lamb. I am the Democratic nominee for City Controller, and I was honored to have the support of some of the people in this room, actually, in the spring, in the Democratic primary. You know, for those of you who don't know me, I grew up here in Pittsburgh, and I left Pittsburgh to go off to college. I went to Penn State, came back to Pittsburgh and began a career in public service. And I went back to school. I got a master's degree in public management down at school at Carnegie Mellon. And then I went on to the law school at Duquesne. I am a lawyer, admitted to practice here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I am currently the Allegheny County Pathonetary, and unless something very bizarre happens in the next 8 weeks, I will be the last Pathonetary of Allegheny County. You know, in my career as a public servant, I think the decisions I've made, the actions I've taken, have done a couple of things. First off, I've always looked to improve government so that government is working for the people that it is meant to serve. I've done that in every office that I've held, in every job that I've done. And to me, what that means is creating a government that, a government of integrity, a government of professionalism, you know, a government that is fair. And so when I began to think about the City Controller's office, those are the issues that were most in my mind. Creating a government of integrity, a government that's open, transparent. And so as I moved through the process of deciding to run for this office, I looked at the issues that I could affect and therefore bring about better service to the people of the city of Pittsburgh. And to me, in the Controller's office, what that means is not only, as you heard what the office does, it takes care of the monetary and financial policy, but my effort was not only to ensure that you get a fair return for your tax dollars, but also that each of our communities are getting a fair share of it. And the way we're going to do that is through regular audits, fiscal and performance audits, something that hasn't happened in this city for years and years. We got to get back on a regular audit schedule and then make the improvements we need to make in our city's accounting and reporting system. I guess, does that mean my time is up? Okay, that's it. All right, thank you. I have more to say. Thank you.
And the agenda was listed in alphabetical order. I just handed you the mic. I just want you to know there was nothing to that. Okay, Ms. Michael Lamb really should first, so I apologize for that. And we can either continue to go in this order or however you want to go. But the first question is, how will you help get the city in better financial standing?
Should I go first? Since I can go first.
Right.
Well, I think there are a number of things we need to do. As we talked about, the City Controller's job is about auditing. It's about having the fiscal controls that the city needs. One of the big problems we have in the city right now is that we really don't know what our fiscal situation is. You know, we have, it's almost like you know, in your family, you have a checking account. Imagine if everyone in your family had their own set of checks, but no, and registers, but there was only one account. And there was no communication between the members. You know, you couldn't operate that way. That's in many ways the way the city works right now. Departments are operating on their own. There's really not a sole, single, comprehensive fiscal reporting system in the city of Pittsburgh, so that we know for sure what our fiscal situation was. A few years ago, you know, we went to Harrisburg to try to bring about new changes to our tax structure here. And one of the problems we had in Harrisburg was we couldn't convince people in Harrisburg what our fiscal situation was because they didn't believe us, and they shouldn't have, because of the situation we had.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Michael says that the controller's job is about auditing. Well, if we look back, we've had Tom Flaherty was in the office for a while, and he did audits, but it really didn't help. You know, we've been mismanaged to the hilt. We now have overlords on different sides. You know, I think the controller's job, and actually the overlords are going to be doing the auditing. You know, so yes, so there are some fiscal responsibilities, and there's 60 people in that office. But for me, I think the job of controller would be to sustain a discussion as to why and how the city really needs to operate. And that's about communicating with the residents on a block by block, on a group by group basis. And we don't get to have the teaching and the understanding of what's really happening down there. And we don't have the light shining brightly on all these different funds. So it has to be about putting everything on the internet, It has to be about teaching and understanding and teaching ourselves how to get a grip on our city.
Thank you. Next question. What do you think about mergers of the city and county?
I support a consolidation. You know, I believe that where the city and county are doing the same thing, we ought to be doing it together to save money. So, you know, and in many areas, the city and county aren't doing the same thing. I mean, the county doesn't have a fire department to the degree that the city does. They have a fire department at the airport, but that's about it. So there are some areas where, you know, I've always pointed to tax collection as a possibility. You know, right now, the county treasurer sends out a tax bill for your property tax. You know, we could include the city's property tax bill on that bill, save not just the cost of the mailing and everything else, but have the county collect that tax for us. I mean, that would save us a significant amount of money on the cost side and allow us to do that. Those kind of opportunities. You know, a lot of you know I ran for mayor a couple of years ago, and I made a lot of hay about the dog licenses. Now, as silly as that is, they still have 2 different dog licenses here in Allegheny County. I mean, those kind of things we really need to combine so we can save money and really provide more, not only more efficient, but more effective services for the people here in the city.
Yeah, I'm glad Michael raised the dog licenses. I've probably heard that hundreds of times in the past. And now we're going to talk about serving a post or a letter or a tax bill, save a little bit on postage, and there might be some economies of scale there. You know, but I think the next place that we need to merge is to pull parks together and recreation and after school and things with kids together. So I would suggest that we use a model that they use in Illinois. In Illinois, I was a swim coach and I worked for the park district. That we take all recreation and after school off of Grant Street and put it into its own body, a Pittsburgh Park District. So I would pull out city parks, pull out county parks and recreation, take over the after school activities in the school district, and then eventually merge it into suburban areas as well, so that we would then begin with the rad tax and with the stadiums and the teams, and then begin to really look at the authorities. In Chicago, they've taken parking garages and they've turned the revenues over toward the parks. The parking park sort of works together, so there's a lot to be done more than dog licenses and tax bills.
What can be done to raise additional revenue for the city? This was asked several different ways. So, again, what can be done to raise additional revenue for the city?
The city controller this week or recently said that we should start taxing the ball teams, the hockey teams, a tax because they're a payment in lieu of taxes. You know, that would raise a little bit of money, but how about if we just had the teams own their own stadiums? I I don't need them to pay that much taxes, but I'd rather them have the $400 million for the stadiums. So how about if we take the parking authority with all its garages and we liquidate it, and we allow them to be sold? You know, we would need a parking department within the city to collect the meter maids and such like that. So there's thousands of properties that the URA owns. They're not doing us any good. We have to cut the grass, we have to maintain it. So there's a lot of liquidation that needs to occur, and I'd start with the stadiums. They should be privately owned.
I'm going to disagree with Mark on one point. First off, the parking authority. If the parking authority didn't own downtown parking garages, parking rates downtown would go through the roof. That's the only thing keeping parking rates reasonable in Pittsburgh. Where I'd like to see us more focus on is the money we're leaving on the table right now. You know, I started my campaign talking about everyone paying their fair share. And I can tell you, as we look around the city, we believe that when you look at people who aren't paying the wage tax, who are living in the city but using a dummy address outside the city, people who aren't paying business taxes because they haven't properly registered their businesses in town, you know, we think there's a good $10 million that's being left on the table every year that we're not collecting. That's what auditing does, you know, and that's what the controller's office does. Mark said that, you know, when Tom Flaherty was controller all these years, we audited and we still have nothing to gain for it. Well, the truth is we weren't auditing all these years. I've gone back now 17 years, and I've yet to find 1 year that we have audited 6 or 7 departments or 6 or 7 performance audits, and that's what we need to do, not just because it's good business practice, because the charter requires it, and it hasn't happened. We've got to change that.
I believe I'm reading this correctly. What can be done to address the issues sized by Pollar's report on stadium team tax? Accountabilities. Does anybody know what that is supposed to be?
Yeah, I wrote that. I have bad
Thank you.
handwriting. Sorry, really bad.
Help me out a little bit.
If I could just ask the question. You know, the current controller wrote a fantastic audit about implementation of the anti-sweatshop ordinance, and stadium audit that just came out has phenomenal recommendations about what can be done to get more out of those teams. And the administration is ignoring it. I think they're ignoring those reports. So other than just producing reports, what can the controller do to compel the administration to take action based on the objective standard of reporting we expect from the company?
You know, the controller's strength and power comes from that function, comes from the audit function. You know, looking at issues, you know, we want to look at issues with respect to contracting in the city and in the school district, you know, because we do have school district audit functions as well. You know, we want to be able to look at those issues and make recommendations, but you're right. I mean, you have to have that holy pulpit, and you can't necessarily be in the pocket of the mayor, so to speak, because that's not going to work. You know, we have a situation, as you know, in this district, you have a terrible situation on city council. Where was the controller through that? You know, where were the audits done, you know, to ensure that money was being spent properly in that situation? It wasn't being done. So that's the role. That's the key role that the controller provides. I would disagree with you that I think the findings of the stadium audit were all that phenomenal, because I thought they were just kind of not much. But the role of the controller has to be to get out there and not be you know, in the mayor's pocket. And I guarantee you that that's where I plan to be.
There is no peer review on Grant Street because everybody is all in the same party. You know, I don't believe they're really willing to rock the boat. There should have been peer review within council, from council president. There should have been peer review from the office. There should have been peer review from the city controller's office. Well, when scandal happens, you just need to follow the money. So we're not doing peer review. They're not rocking the boat. They're covering for each other. They're hiding up things frequently. And I think that's what some of the energy has happened with the mayor's race, with an outsider, a Republican run. You know, I bring that as well in a sense of being a libertarian. We need to break one-party domination. So that's the first thing that I think that really needs to happen. I think the stadiums, we already addressed it as far as this, they should be owned by the teams and then they would be able to do it. No, there was one other moment about the parking authority as far as the price would go up. Can I have a moment on that, the 30-second? Or?
Yes.
Okay. Michael said the parking rates would go through the roof downtown if the parking authority was liquidated. But, you know, what's gone through the roof is the taxes. You know, we're already the highest tax. You know, that's already through the roof. The rates in town are somewhat suppressed by the parking authority because they own so many. And then Jim Furlow can say, hey, free parking for the whole month of December. But when you have that type of mentality, nobody is ever going to build their own private lot. PNC Bank expands on First Side, they get their free parking lot. Lazarus got a free parking lot because they were able to do deals with the city, and that's what kills us and throws things through the roof.
Okay, what can be done to better control the dollars expended by the city's various authorities?
Well, this is an area that I think we have to take a lot of attention, because right now, you know, we have the URA, Parking Authority, the Pittsburgh Water and Sewer Authority. You know, we have to be able to audit those authorities, and I plan to do that. One of the things that you see now is each of these entities are operating completely on their own. They go out and buy separate computer systems. They all have their own individual financial systems and reporting systems. They have their own. A couple of them have their own pension systems. You know, we need to, while maintaining the autonomy of those authorities, be able to coordinate a lot to the city, so that we can have the city then charge back to those authorities for use of computer systems and financial reporting systems. That would not only help the city, but it would better coordinate all of our efforts throughout both the city and all the authorities.
Yeah, I think that's a good contrast. So we need to maintain the autonomy of the authorities, is what Michael's saying. You know, I think we need to liquidate these authorities. You know, and that's what I would try to do, and that's what I would try to educate, that's what I would try to teach about, and that's what I would try to make discovery and have a sustained discussion about. As controller, I wouldn't have the power to do that, but I would have the power to make that part of the conversation. The authorities don't need their own autonomy. There's no accountability. I've said years ago that all the authority board members, from Pat included, need to come up for retention votes, like we're going to be doing with the judges. Who picks these people, and why are they never held accountable in the election? You know, so we need some democracy in these authorities, and we need retention votes among authority members. And if they've been there for 4, 5, 6 years, they should have higher rates of positive votes on the retention to keep those positions before they're eventually liquidated.
Thank you. How will merging the city and county cut jobs, or will it cut jobs? And if so, how many do you think?
Would merging
the city and county, would it cut jobs? And if so, how many?
The jobs that are being done now, like especially the authorities, and that's where a lot of the jobs reside, would still be there in private sector elements mostly. And I'm not in favor of necessarily cutting jobs. I just want to be able to shine a light on what's happening, who's doing it, what's being done. Crossing guards, for example. I think we cut crossing guards. I think that was a problem. I would rather empower crossing guards, hire 3 times as much. I think there's good value to that as far as our pedestrian life, as far as care of the cities. But I would make sure that they were able to write tickets. That they were able to call the principals with a cell phone that we provide and the radios, and they were able to interact with the police. So I'm not sure that the cutting of jobs is exactly it. Now, the recreational things, sure, if we put it all in their own recreational body where there's a recreational governance, that would be splendid. We get a lot more volunteerism out of it. So, and even with the Citizen Congress, I want to be able to bring more people into city government as far as volunteer work.
I guess, you know, we need to address what we're talking about here. You know, obviously, if the city were to merge into Allegheny County, which is something I don't support right now today, because I think it will just dilute the power of the city. You know, the city right now represents 25%. It's 25% of the people of Allegheny County. Put the city into the county, you're going to have basically 75% of the people in the suburban community dictating municipal policy in the city of Pittsburgh. That's not a good answer for Pittsburgh. But I do think there are functional validations that we should work toward and realize things. You know, and you know, I'm in an office right now that's going to be merged into 2 other offices come the first of the year. And there will be savings. There will be job savings. Of course, my job will be gone and some others. But they expect that over the next 2 years that there'll be about a 10% manpower savings. So that's the model. I guess that's what, if that's what you're talking about. Thank you.
As controller, how would your efforts result in more city services for the East End community?
You know, this is one of the things that I talk a lot about in spring, and I'll talk a little bit about it right now. I believe that the controller's job, the biggest tool that we have is the tool of performance audits, where we can go out and see city services, see how they're being performed, and then make recommendations. But sometimes audits tell you what you already know. You know, we know that some communities in this city get better service than others. And what I hope to bring about is an auditing format that will begin to address that, so that we can show with data, not just stories and anecdotes, but we can show with data that there are some underserved communities throughout the city, not just in the East End, but throughout the city of Pittsburgh. That's what we need. We need to make sure that underserved communities begin to get the services that they have long deserved. And that's what I plan to do as city control. Thank you.
The question's about more city services to the East End, right?
Yes.
Okay. I have 2 guiding principles, priorities. One is freedom, and one is the kids, the youth. So, if I'm a controller, I'm going to look to build freedoms. And secondly, I'm going to be looking to build interaction and engagement with the youth. So I think our East End community interactions are going to skyrocket because we're going to do a lot more with the kids. We're going to get more access to the schools, and we're going to have more understanding as to how to play well with each other. So, as a city controller, I would want to create a citizens' congress. We would be able to have a place on Grand Street where we could go and organize and talk and discuss and sustain conversations. And I think from that, we'll be able to reach into volunteerism, reach into coordination, and be able to do much more. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about, and perhaps in my closing, about doing more with less. I think we need to do more with less free. More.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one last question, and then I'm going to ask you to give a 1-minute closing. This is the final question. In what ways can the city controller most affect the needs, aspirations, and concerns of the African American community?
Yeah, freedom's at stake here. You know, with whether it's police brutality, or whether it's the national ID card, or whether it's going to war, fighting for and coming back blown up. You know, and as a libertarian, I am strong against the war. I am strong for personal liberties. You know, I don't like the idea of these cameras all around town. I want the cameras pointed at the politicians instead of the citizens. You know, so and there's a layer of discussion about freedom and liberties that just doesn't happen now in Grand Street. And I think that hits it home for many people here. And that's where I stand as far as being a libertarian, being someone that's different than the status quo.
And do you want to make any additional remarks, just specifically concerning the African American? You talked about the war, but...
Yeah, freedom fits everybody.
Okay.
And when we are able to go to where we need to go based on our own choices, we'll be able to better ourselves without having a lot of red tape to cut through. And that just encumbers our freedoms in many ways.
Thank you.
Let me talk about a couple specifics that I know some people have addressed with me and things that we want to consider in the controller's office. Contract. You know, we both in the city and maybe even more so in the school district have real issues with respect to how contracts get awarded and the process that they follow. Underbidding contracts, coming back for cost overruns, and not having to go back to bid. And a lot of that has been done as a way to avoid minority and doing business requirements in these contracts. We want to take a look at that. We want to make some recommendations on stopping that kind of process and moving forward. A lot of you know that I'm involved, and Esther knows this, that I'm involved in an organization called A+ Schools that has really focused on student achievement, and in particular, the elimination of the racial achievement gap in Pittsburgh Public Schools. So we are going to begin to do audits, actual performance audits in the school district. It hasn't been done. It hasn't been done in 20 years. We're going to start to do that so that we can really begin to provide, really have our school board focus on the issue of student achievement. And lastly, one of the things that I get grabbed about a lot is the issue of code enforcement in our community. And whether that be obviously that's a citywide issue, but I hear a lot about it in predominantly African American communities, so that we get people out there addressing these code enforcement issues in our communities.
Thank you. And if we could have a closing statement from you first, Mark?
I went first in the opening.
Okay, that's fine. Mike, would you give your closing
Absolutely.
statement?
Well, first, let me thank EPEP and League of Women Voters and Student Voices and the League of Young Voters and any other organization that I was part of this tonight. Esther, thank you very much for being here. Now, this is a great opportunity for us to get out, and really the first opportunity we've had to get out and talk to the community. Just shows you what goes on when there's a marriage race that people are more interested in. But it's been a great opportunity for me to come out, and I'm glad to do it. We need to begin to change the direction of this city, and certainly change its financial direction. I have worked for a long time, as I said before, in trying to improve and create a better government of integrity, professionalism, of fairness. Government that really addresses our community's needs in a superior way. And we really want to respond to this community, and our tool to do that are fiscal audits. I'm ready to do this job. I'm the Democrat, the nominee on November 6th, 7th, whatever day it is. November 7th, and I really appreciate you. Thank you very much.
In the sake of clarity, everybody can vote on November 6th. And it's more about performance than it is about being kind. Getting the numbers right is sort of important. So, but I would like to thank everybody, Tim, Celeste, everybody, the church facilities. Thanks for coming out. This is the lone debate for the citywide office, which is absurd. And democracy matters to me, and I'm also on the ballot in the city council race. There's no debates, and that's a shame. With that in mind, I've prepared a DVD with the help of David Adams. I would like everybody here to take one home. It gives you a good point as to what we're talking about. I'm glad Michael did bring up the schools. The controller has an important job with schools. I've been a coach. Basically, I know that what happens in the city is much unlike what happens in the suburbs. And our kids are not able to compete on a day-in, day-out basis with that, and there's plenty to be done with the schools. I have more than 200 points that I'd like to address out of the schools, and as far as performance, including the selling off of buildings, which I think is somewhat questionable. So thanks for coming out tonight, for everybody, including my opponent, and I look forward to the next round of...
Before we move on to our next pair of candidates, I want to bring Celeste to the microphone. She has a couple of announcements. And I understand that we have David Schulenberg, District 1, that's here, right here. So would you just wave and we can give him a round of applause?